this mental framework is very simple, but kind of difficult or challenging to implement, and definitely takes practice in order to really get it working consistently in your life. However, it has significantly impacted me in a good way because it helps me push through difficult situations as well as strong emotions. Like, I don't like to say negative emotions because all emotions are basically just a part of the human experience, and there is no negative emotions. The only thing negative is how you might react to the emotions. So, just quick note there, or at least my perspective on it. But this mental framework or concept in particular has really helped me when it comes to pushing through those emotions, getting past it, and just kind of moving along in my life and everything, regardless of the situation. Like, whether it's when I've lost races or when I've lost clients or lost money in whatever ways with my business or like whatever else. So, overall, what I'll explain in this video is basically exactly what this amazing, simple concept and mental framework is, and exactly how I implement it for myself and how you can as well. And by the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm Logan Lesser, a national motocross racer. I grew my agency and ran my digital marketing agency for the past like 4, nearly 5 years, growing it to at its peak, it hit about $30,000 a month. And now I basically am building my personal brand, sharing my lessons, and building the Champion Protocol community, which, by the way, link to that is below. But anyway, with that being said, what this framework is, and I've got it up next to me because I actually made a post in the Champion Protocol community talking about it today, and it seemed to get some like people liked it. So overall, what I said was that I want to throw out this quick reminder that you have 100% control over your thoughts and how you feel. Regardless of what's happening or what's going on, you can decide and choose how you feel. So, for example, if I lost a race, lost a client, lost a bunch of money in crypto, true story, or anything like that, I've learned to look at it from a logical perspective and think, this sucks, but what can I learn from this? Why did this happen? How can I try to avoid having this happen again? So then after I ask those questions, I simply choose to feel fine. And I don't feel stressed, anxious. I said stressed twice in my message. And instead, I make the conscious decision and think to myself, what happened sucks, but regardless, I'm going to stay calm and feel fine. So basically, I hope that makes sense. But what I'm saying is that when I first heard about this, and this was years ago, I first heard, I can't remember who it was who was explaining this mental framework. It might have been Alex Hormozy. I've learned a lot of mindset stuff from him. But basically, one concept that kind of goes perfectly with this is, and that's okay. Like dot, 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 and that's okay. And what that is that like whatever might be happening or going on or whatever, basically you just add and that's okay to the end of it. So you say and literally say like out loud everything that might be going wrong or that just you're not a fan of that's happening. Or like, for example, maybe I lost a race or I lost a client or I lost some money in a whatever investment or just in my business or something's going wrong or whatever. Basically, you just like list out everything and then you just end with, and that's okay. And it's so weird because it's so simple, and like you would hear that and be like, that is so stupid. Like, that's not going to do anything. Blah, 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 blah. But it actually does. Like, as soon as you do it, it almost takes a weight off your shoulders because basically, for example, imagine you were like, oh, man, I just lost my biggest client. I've got multiple disputes that I'm dealing with. I don't know how I'm going to make payroll. Like, we haven't been able to land a client in a while, and so on, so on. And that's like, and that's okay. And then basically the reason you're saying that, you're not saying it so that you're like, and that's okay, like life goes on and whatever, like whatever happens, happens. It's like, no, like I believe in being a playmaker. And basically that's a term I heard Patrick Bet-David use. And it's basically where you're the person who takes charge and you're ahead of the curve. You're constantly looking at the next 5 moves ahead of you, and you're not just reacting to what's going on. You're positioning everything to go hopefully in the way that you're looking for it to go. And then if it doesn't go that way, you adjust and then you try and figure something else out. But overall, you're a playmaker. So you're the one out there making the plays and making the moves in order to make shit happen, not the one sitting back waiting for things to happen, you know? So hopefully that makes sense. But I believe in that. So when you say like, and that's okay, basically all you're saying is you're just kind of taking that pressure off yourself, kind of saying like, okay, all this shit is going wrong, all this stuff is happening, and that's okay. Like, shit happens. That's part of life. It's part of growing a business. It's part of racing. It's part of whatever. So that's okay. How are we going to fix it? Like, you kind of just immediately adjust. Like, by saying that, you kind of eliminate the emotions out of it by saying, and that's okay. And it kind of takes the emotional weight off your shoulders because it allows you to realize, like, it's okay. Shit happens. Now let's figure out how to fix it. So it allows you to move from emotional action, or just like your emotions running crazy, to moving to logic and figuring out and looking at the situation and analyzing it in a logical perspective so that you can figure out, like, okay, what can we do to fix this? We've lost clients, we've got disputes. Like, how can we try and maybe win those clients back? How can we try and figure out these disputes, or maybe speak with those clients and see what might have gone wrong and see if we can just fix that, because maybe they just misinterpreted something or something went wrong that we can fix, or whatever else. Like, you start analyzing it and looking at it in a logical perspective and taking action and being a playmaker in order to figure it out. But going back to the main point of the video, basically what I mentioned in my post is that I heard a long time ago, a few years ago, like I said, it might have been Hormozy, somebody very smart and far ahead of me when it comes to business and just like that stuff. So regardless, what he said was something along the lines of like, you can choose how you feel. Like, it's simply a decision. Like, everything, it doesn't matter what's going on around you. You can literally decide. You have control over your emotions and how you feel. Now, a lot easier said than done, because when shit is hitting the fan and things are going wrong, like, the emotions are going nuts. Like, there's a lot going on. So it is hard to do it. It's a lot easier said than done. However, if you can approach it in a way where it's like, okay, I believe that, yeah, I do have 100% control over how I feel and like the emotion that I'm feeling in this moment. Then basically what I've done in the past, like with my agency and my business, is that I kind of approached it in a way where if I lost a client, I'd basically look at the situation. I'd be like, okay, the client left, and that's okay. Like, I'm going to choose to feel calm about this. Like, basically, instead of reacting in the more natural way that like my body and my mind wants to, which is getting super stressed and anxious and worried and thinking like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, where are we going to get our next client? Like, all this stuff. Basically, I'm just like, this shit happened. It's not ideal, but I'm still going to choose to feel fine and remain calm. And then it basically just allows you to transition from that state that I think a lot of people, including myself in the past, kind of stay in for an extended period, which is like freaking out, stressed, anxious. And when you're in that state and you're feeling those emotions and all that, usually you can't really make the best decisions, because that's when you start like jumping around and doing crazy stuff. And usually, from experience, you kind of make the situation worse. Whereas if you can approach it where it's like, okay, this happened, but I am choosing to feel calm and to feel fine, then it allows you to move away from that emotional roller coaster and chaos to now since you're calm and your mind is calm and your just overall state is calm, now you can analyze the situation logically and figure out how to fix it or how to improve from it or whatever. Like, I keep mentioning business examples, but going back to racing, if maybe I lost a race or I was at a regional for Loretta's, and believe me, I've thrown away plenty of freaking Loretta Lynn tickets. If you don't know what that is, Loretta's is like the #1 amateur national motocross race in the country and arguably the world, at least one of the biggest in the world. And you have to go to regionals to qualify, and regionals are like the most stressful race ever, like way more stressful than even Loretta Lynn's itself. And I have thrown away numerous regionals. Like, one, I remember I was in qualifying position, and literally on the last lap, I had a small tip over in a corner and threw it away. Like, it was terrible. So that was awful. But overall, using a racing example, say that you get off the track, you finish, and this is even just a sports example in general, but you finish the race and maybe you did throw away the regional like I did. Like, in the past, I would come back to the trailer and I'd throw a temper tantrum. I'd get so upset. I even kicked a hole in the wall in our RV one time because I was so mad, and I was wearing my motocross boot, so I mean, it wasn't that hard to kick the hole in the wall. And I would throw my helmet. Like, I was a massive baby, to be honest, for a long time. And then once I figured this out, and this is just one of many things, but once I figured like this out, then basically I was able to be like, okay, I didn't qualify. I fell on the last lap. That sucks, but it's okay. I'm going to choose to feel fine and to be calm. And then I immediately move on instead of going through the temper tantrum, being an idiot and baby for freaking hours. Like I literally would just basically pout for hours. Instead of doing that, I transition to then looking at the situation and being like, why did I fall? What was going through my mind when on that last lap? Like, did I lose focus? Like, what happened in that corner that made me fall? Like, what is it that I need to work on? Did the bike end up bogging? Like, is there something wrong with the bike? Did I lose focus? Like, basically, I'm able to analyze it and figure out what I did wrong because it's the only way that I can that's the only way I can try to avoid that happening again in the future. But me being an emotional, ridiculous child, like just throwing a temper tantrum, all this stuff, that's not going to do anything. Like I'm not going to grow from that at all. I'm not going to learn anything from that. So I think that overall with this concept, like one big piece of it is being able to move away from being super emotional, where most likely you're not going to be able to make a very good decision. Moving away from that to as fast as you can, moving to a calm state where you can analyze the situation and figure out how to learn from it and maybe solve it if there's a problem or something, solve it in a logical way and move forward the best way that you can. So that's one way to approach this and like why it's important to be able to be like, I'm going to choose to feel this way. Another reason why this is important is even just being around your family, friends, and other people. Like, and just being like on your own. Like even when you're by yourself and you feel like shit and your emotions are going nuts, like it sucks. Like it's not a good feeling. Like you're just stressed and anxious and like it's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. Whereas if you can basically figure out how to control your mind to where you choose what emotion you feel, then overall like you're just going to feel way better so much faster. You know, because whatever's going on, like all those emotions and stuff, eventually they recede. It's almost like a storm, you know? Like every storm that comes, it ends up leaving at some point. So your emotions and stuff, you will eventually calm down. So it's kind of like if I'm eventually going to calm down, I'd prefer to calm down a lot quicker. So this is a way that you can do that. But aside from being on your own, even when you're around family and friends and all this stuff, like being able to control this is just like so nice. Because even go back to the racing example, when I would do that and I'd lose a race and just be an emotional, ridiculous, I'm trying to think of a better word for it, like maniac, I guess you could say. But when I was an emotional maniac after a race that didn't go so well, I was embarrassing myself. I was embarrassing my family. I was embarrassing the other people around me. Like, it's not a good look at all. And I'm not one to like say that you should care about what others think. However, there's still something to be said. Like, you definitely don't want to do that. So if you can do this where you control your emotions and you feel more calm, then even when shit is going crazy and like with the business stuff, when you're losing clients and I've got all these disputes I'm dealing with and I can't seem to land a client, I don't know if I'm going to make payroll, like I don't want to take that and then direct it at my family or my friends, because that's when you start to misdirect anger and emotions where you like lash out on your family or your parents or your brother or your friends or whatever. Or if you're married, then you lash out on your wife or your husband or like whatever. And that's where things can go very wrong. However, what sucks about it is that it's actually misdirected. Like it wasn't even them that did anything wrong. Like usually it could be just this little thing that they said or that they did or whatever, and then it just like triggered those emotions in you for whatever reason, and those emotions are actually rooted from what's going on in say the business or whatever is actually going wrong. But instead of kind of dealing with that, you misdirect the anger towards that person and just lash out at them, you know? So hopefully that makes sense. But I did that one time with my parents a long time ago. And I remember because we had just finished riding one day and my bike was kind of muddy. Like it was pretty dirty. It wasn't like terrible, but it was pretty dirty. And I didn't get home until it was dark out. And basically I didn't wash my bike. And it's really important to wash your bike because otherwise like the dirt will cause rust. And obviously if it causes rust, then on like the parts on the bike, then obviously that could be very dangerous because the parts are a lot more likely to potentially break or whatever, you know, and that could be very dangerous. So my dad brought it up and was like, hey, why didn't you wash the bike? And I kid you not, I flipped out so fast. And I was like, I always wash the bike every single time I finish riding. I immediately wash it afterwards. And then the one time that I don't, tonight, the one time when I come home and it's super dark, I don't wash it and I get my head torn off. And I went off like crazy. And then long story short, like I ended up leaving the room and kind of just going on my own and stuff. But I immediately, because this actually wasn't like, it was probably like a year and a half ago maybe. But I had already understood a lot of this mindset stuff by then. So I actually looked at it and I was like, I did not just get that upset because of my non-washed bike. Like, definitely not. Like, that is definitely not why. So then I started actually thinking about it and I kind of stepped back and almost looked at myself in the third person. I was like, what actually, like, what's the root of this? Like, it's that concept of you don't see what's below the tip of the iceberg. Well, the tip of the iceberg in this scenario is like my dad mentioning, hey, you didn't wash the bike, and then I flipped out. But it had nothing to do with that. It was actually what was below the tip of the iceberg that actually triggered me and made me lash out. So I basically sat back and thought about it and analyzed, and I was like, okay, what actually is the root of it? And after I thought, it actually didn't take me long at all. It took me literally a couple minutes, and I was like, that's why. Like, that is why. And that's also, and I was able to connect it because I was also trying to figure out, like, why did that trigger it anyway? Like, why was it that particular comment or whatever that made me kind of go off? And so I was able to trace it back and I was like, that makes sense. Like, it was just this, like, in the mind, like my subconscious must have just connected the dots just this little bit to where it was similar enough to what that root thing was that was bothering me that it was almost like pulling the trigger, and then I just blew up and lashed out. So overall, what my main point there is that when you're able to do this and you're able to basically go from this very emotional state to deciding, you know what, this is happening, but I'm choosing to feel calm and fine, then you're able to move to figuring it out logically and analyzing the situation, figuring out how to learn from it, how to approach this moving forward, how to fix it, whatever it is. And when you do that, you also relieve the stress and anxiety because you know that you're actually acting on it. Like, when you're being super emotional, one thing I've also noticed, even from family and friends as well as myself, is when you're being super emotional, that's not fixing it. So it's not fixing the problem or helping you learn from it and basically move past it. Like, it's not fixing it whatsoever. So like the stress and anxious feelings, they don't go away. Like, even after you calm down from those emotions, like the stress and anxiety doesn't go away because you didn't act and do anything that is actually going to fix the problem and help you move forward in a positive way. However, if you can move away from this emotional state to the logical, you're actually acting on it and doing something that is going to help you either fix the problem or move past it. Or going back to my regional example where I threw away the regional because I fell in the last lap, I could think back and be like, you know what? The reason why is because it was the last lap at a regional. I started losing focus and I started thinking about the fact that it was the last lap and I didn't want to throw it away. And as soon as I started thinking, because when you're racing, doing any sport, like, ideally you want to be in flow state. Like, you want to be in the zone, as I like to say, as a lot of people like to say. And that is when you're like performing at your peak. Like, that's when you're performing at your absolute best. And I actually figured out how to trigger that for myself so I could get into that. Which, by the way, if you want to learn how to do that, check out the Champion Protocol community. I've got a bunch of course content and stuff in there that explains exactly what my system is for that. And I figured this out well after I threw away this regional. But regardless, going back to the main point, if I look at it and I'm like, okay, the reason that I lost it and fell is because I lost focus and started thinking about, like, I didn't want to throw away the race and all this stuff. Now I actually know what I need to work on, which is I need to work on this. And I need to work on my focus during the race and making sure that it doesn't matter what race it is, what lap it is, what position I'm in, I'm able to hold that focus and stay in the zone the entire time so that I don't make those split-second mistakes that throw everything away. So if I do it that way, I now know what I need to work on. So it immediately kind of moves me away from that, like, feeling of, obviously I'm still going to feel like angry and upset because I did just throw that away and it freaking sucks. But it still allows you to move away from it quicker and, like, move on from the situation quicker because at least now you know what went wrong and how you can at least work on it so that it doesn't happen again. So hopefully that makes sense. And connecting that back to, I know this is like long, but I promise I'm almost done. Connecting that back to the whole scenario with like friends and family is when you do that, since you are basically immediately like handling those emotions and those strong feelings like stress, anxiety, and anger, whatever it is, since you're handling it head on and figuring out how you can avoid this or fix it or whatever, then you're kind of eliminating those emotions because you're acting on this logically. And after you do that, just like I mentioned with that racing example, after you do that, it allows you to, instead of going and being around family and friends and acting like you're calm, and then potentially basically being a basically being a firecracker ready to be set off like I was with my parents and everything way back when, instead of being in that state and faking being calm, you'll actually be calm and you'll actually feel fine. So then you're not like faking anything, and you're not going to be a firecracker ready to go off, because you are actually fine and feeling calm because you were able to move on from that situation or whatever it is. So anyway, I hope that all makes sense. Feel free to like comment below if you got any questions with that, or if you want me to expand maybe in another video, because this is really a powerful mindset tool that I've used countless times, especially when things seem to be going wrong. So yeah. But anyway, with that being said, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe. Make sure to check out the Champion Protocol community linked below. Super excited for what's to come in the future with that and what's in there already and what we're doing. It's really, really killer. And all the members in there are basically just elite athletes, high performers, and people who basically are in the pursuit of becoming a champion in all arenas of life. Like, that is the idea and concept behind it. So if that's you, then definitely at least check it out. You might want to join and join the community. But with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.